All right. Jam, just let me know when we're good. I will kick it off. All right, thank you. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hartford Select Board on Tuesday, October 31st, 2023 at 6:01 p.m. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. One member of this public body or other staff is present at the location to ensure the public can participate if desired. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in this public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it's important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. A member of the public or the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email at selectboard@hartford-vte.org. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by a roll call vote in accordance with the law. It's required by open meeting law. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all members participating in the meeting, and have those members attending remotely identify themselves to ensure that they can hear and be heard throughout the meeting. Lanny.
I'm here.
Rocket.
Hello, everyone. I'm here. A little sick, so remote.
You can hear us, right?
I can hear you. If you can hear me, I can hear you.
Make sure Rocket, the people identify themselves.
My name is Rocket.
Thank you, Rocket. Allie.
I'm here.
Mary.
I am here.
Dan.
I'm here attending remotely, Dan Fraser.
And you can hear us and we can hear you, it sounds like.
Here.
And I am also here. All right, with that done, our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us?
Sure.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have no liquor business. We have no cannabis business. Order of agenda, we're going to add an item right at the start involving an open meeting law complaint that we received. So we did receive an open meeting law complaint from a citizen, specifically that when we ratified a service out of grade proposal on September 19th, that we did not vote by roll because the vote was not unanimous. And we acknowledge that that happened. On a future meeting, we will vote to ratify that proposal, and that will be on the agenda so people can see what the proposal is and what the cost is. And then going forward, I will continue to read this script that I just read, and the board will have votes by roll call if they are not unanimous. Okay, so we'll move to public comment. Start with people in the room. Anyone has any public comment, they're free to come up to the microphone. Just identify yourself and town or village of residence, and you'd have 5 minutes to speak. We'd ask that you not make any personal attacks. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none on Zoom.
No hands raised at the moment.
Okay, so we will close public comment.
A hand just went up.
Okay, we will take that hand.
I don't seem to have all the permissions. One moment, Heidi, I'll be right with you. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Heidi.
Hello, Heidi.
Did you unmute? She looks like she's unmuted. Okay.
Good evening, Heidi Duto, White River Junction, Vermont. I would like to press an issue that I brought up about a month ago. Actually, a little over a month ago. I made a question to the select board asking a question that I was wondering if you had an answer to. I had asked the board if you could please give me an answer as to what Paula Nolte and Gail Ostrich had actually received as an upper grade to actually run the town, since our previous town manager has been released from her position to date.
Yes, I think we were preparing that information and,
I can give the amount from.
okay, yeah, Kim, if you want, I'm sure.
So Heidi, back in the end of August, so this was before the current agreement that we're going to ratify during the next meeting. But so I had asked what the amount was that we had paid in comparison with the previous town manager search. And the response I received from the HR director was, in a quick review of monies paid to MRI for the period of Brandon leaving July 31st, 2022, and Tracy arriving February 16, 2021, a period of 200 days, the town paid MRI $122,964. For the period of October 21, 2022 through the last pay period. Wait, I think the Brandon date was wrong because that was not, he left in 2021 or 2020. Sorry, so the date is incorrect in the Brandon one. So it was the date of him leaving in July. I'm sorry, I realize this is confusing. So let me rephrase this.
Perhaps it would be better to make sure we have the exact dates and numbers and get back to Heidi.
Sure, that's fine too. I mean, basically it's significantly less for 293 days from the previous town manager until August 10th, 2023, which was the last pay period of that time. It was $92,070.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? I guess I'll try to maybe acquire more, because I know that Brandon left before July 31st, 2022. So that date must be 2020 is my guess.
Yeah, Heidi, if it's all right with you, we can get you the precise dates and the amounts.
May I speak?
Yeah, sure.
So I wasn't even asking about Brandon. I was just wondering what the what we were paying as a premium. I just wanted a ballpark. I didn't need the exact, but thank you. So I have another question, and I don't believe I'm asking anything about personnel. I wrote an email to the select board, the town manager, and Dylan today, including Gail and Paula, and I got a return email from Paula saying that she would be unavailable for emails. And our town manager has made 2 comments at the last 2 last select board meetings, I'm sorry, stating that she would be out on medical. So does this mean that she is no longer getting the higher pay rate for the upper grade contract that you made?
I can answer that, Heidi. That supplemental pay to Paula has been suspended for so long as she's out of the office. Once she's back, she would still be under the select board's decision entitled to another 4 or 5 weeks of supplemental onboarding service pay when she returns.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's hard work. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Heidi. Anyone else on Zoom?
No, oh, another hand just went up.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to lower it.
Yep,
Oh.
okay. But Mike Morris, go ahead.
Hello, Select Board, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me speak. I got a notice today that there's a reception for the new town manager Thursday evening, 5:30 to 7 o'clock in, I think, room 2.
That's correct.
Correct? Yeah. I'm a little disappointed that to me, such an important event for us to get our new town manager on board here and everything else, that we're not getting much more than a 48-hour notice for the public, Board of Civil Authority and other town members and employees and everyone else to hear about this. And is there something else we could do that could plan better ahead? I mean, to me, this is an important event, not just last minute, let's do it. And how did this get arranged so in I guess such a short notice to the public? Is that fair? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. As we mentioned, there was a reception on Thursday for John. It came together very quickly. We wanted to get it done as soon as we could. Probably should have done it previously. So I hope everyone can make it. If you can't make it, feel free to stop by and visit John. His doors are open.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, Mike?
Just 48 hours notice for the public to know that their new town manager is coming aboard and there's a reception. Do you think that's a proper way to handle it?
Well, I think throwing a reception is a great idea, and we are holding it Thursday, and that's just how it kind of came together logistically.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other hands on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman.
No other hands up unless, I
Okay.
guess it's still up, so.
So we will end select board comments and announcements.
I'm going to respond to Mike if I could.
Yeah, you want to do it in select board comments?
Nope, right here.
Nope.
I'm going to do it right here.
Okay.
So, Mr. Morris, Laney Collins here. I think it's great that we are doing a reception for John. I myself, as a select board member, didn't know about it until a couple of days ago, so I was quite surprised when I received it in my inbox, saying that we were going to throw one. I think speaks to some of the difficulties that we have. We're still working on communication within the town. It's something that we struggle with. The select board fails at it just as well as staff. And we have to recognize that and do better in the future. Unfortunately, I wish that the public had been given more notice for this, because it would be nice to have availability, especially for the public to come, and the hours that are there are somewhat limiting for public to be able to show up. So I'm going to say forthright that I think communication is lacking on that, and that we need to do better.
Good. Okay, so select board comments and announcements. Kim?
I just want to mention that I went to this event, a public input session at the Public Safety Building for the state was sponsoring a regional emergency medical services in Vermont kind of forum informational session, and it was very informative and really insightful. And there were people from agencies in the state as well as other fire and EMS representatives from around the state, from very rural communities, and there were a couple Hartford staff members there that were, anyway, there was a general consensus that there's a huge need for support in our emergency services throughout the state, and including, community nurse came up, as well as other supplemental mental health services and substance use services. So anyway, it was a very interesting experience, and I think that they will produce some sort of report out of this.
They do, they have to report to the legislature.
Yeah, so we'll stay tuned.
Great. Dan, do you have any select board comment?
He's still with us.
He's saying no.
Okay. So no select board comment from Dan, Mary?
I'd just like to say that I'm sure every staff member is aware of this, but as a liaison to Conservation Commission, I got a notice from VLCT about there's a huge amount of grants available for climate and environmental. I'm sure all the departments and the offices are aware of it, but I was really impressed that there are so many grants out there for work in this area. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. Ellie, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to say happy Halloween for folks who are celebrating. And also, I know there were many different, community events, trunk or treat, Gory Days parade. So just wanted to thank all the different town departments that are a part of making those events really safe and joyful, and to all the community groups also who bring joy to our community. I know that there's a lot going on in our country and in the world, and so just appreciative of all of these moments to bring joy and be in community together. So was just wanting to shout out folks for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ellie. Rocket, do you have any select board comment?
Yes, I want to echo Ally and thanking our departments for a really successful Halloween weekend or lead up to. And just to echo again, happy Halloween. I would like to speak in defense of our chair briefly on the last public comment regarding the organizing for John. First off, I had a really great lunch with John, and I'm very much looking forward to his service to our community. I think he has so much to offer. And so for anyone who takes my perspective with any credibility, I would just lend my confidence, my full vote of confidence to John. I think we have a really great leader at the helm. As far as the organizing of the meeting coming up, I would probably say, yeah, we probably, for more than 48 hours would be great. But at the same time, it's a welcoming event. There's not much more to do than to show up and say hi to John and have some food. So if it's any help, I'm be willing to sort of like help, write a little thing with a listserv. I do think it would be nice if the community had the opportunity to come, but I also would encourage the public and my colleagues on the select board to just be gracious that Mike Hoyt as chair has taken on quite a large task as chair, and it's a lot to organize. And so, Mike, I want to lend you my support as well in this, and I'm looking forward to the event on Thursday. So thank you all. It's an honor to serve Hartford.
Thank you, Rocket. Lanny?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to all of the crews that are working in town of Hartford on our roads. We got the box culvert being taken care of. We've got the parking lot, South Main Street, being taken care of. I know there's other work as well that's being taken care of in the town of Hartford. And as everybody can tell by the cold weather, when you woke up this morning, it's becoming down to a crunch here. So much appreciate to all the crews that are out there working to get us patched up and ready for winter. And look forward to seeing those, really looking forward to seeing South Main Street parking lot completed. That'll be a huge plus. We had a VFW dinner there this weekend, and I was kind of concerned about the number of parking spaces that would have been available, but we managed to get people in for parking. So that was good that they managed to do that, but just a big shout out. So got to see those things done. That's it.
Thank you, Lynn. It is Halloween, but it is also the birthday of John Keats in 1795, who was one of the great romantic poets. His Ode to Autumn is seasonally appropriate and also one of the finest poems ever written. So I encourage everyone to check it out. And that's the end of select board comments and announcements. So we will go to appointments. Our first is to consider the appointment of Kyle Katz to the Resilient Hartford Committee for a 3-year term, beginning October 31st, 2023 and ending October 30th, 2026. Kyle here?
Yeah.
Kyle, if you want to come up and just identify yourself and tell us about your interest in joining this committee, that would be great.
Hello. Hi. All right, it's working. So I'm Kyle Katz. I know a few of you here, but for most of you that don't know me, I recently moved to Hartford in July. I'm originally from the Upper Valley, and I moved away for about 10 years, traveled a bit, and during that time I worked as a agricultural extension volunteer in the Peace Corps, and then went on to do grad school in Cincinnati, where I did a lot of food security work and on an urban farm, and then environmental education at a local high school. And so moving back to the area and moving to Hartford, I was looking to be involved in the community, and something I don't get to do much in my day job is a lot of that food security type stuff I had been doing. And so the Resilient Hartford committee really stood out to me for the work that they've been doing with Clifford Park. And so, yeah, I applied.
Great. Other questions? Good.
I'd just like to say, having worked a little superficially with Kyle on the town plan revisions and the housing chapter that we're working on right now, the town plan, but I think this is a great asset, and thanks for choosing Hartford to live and for participating in your civic engagement.
But Lanny?
Yeah, Kyle, just a question here. What does it mean to you when you hear the term Resilient Hartford? Resilient against what?
I'd say a community that's able to adapt to situations that come up, whether they're environmental or not, that it's able to adapt and rebound and come back from those type. I'd say those types of situations. It's, for me, resiliency is about being able to have many different avenues to take when you're confronted with a challenge, and saying, okay, this is here, but we have options available. We've made room for different options that we can take. And so I think with the food forest, that's one option that's available. Other options could be, increasing the tree canopy to lower the heat island effect, or to keep the community cooler. All of these, it's difficult to quantify the impacts, but I think that the more we work to develop these resources, the better able we are to.
So it's interesting, when we look at what's happening in terms of Hartford, a lot of what's going on is reactive to events that are going on in the world. And what I would love to see Resilient Hartford do is be more proactive, and understanding that you cannot anticipate all of the things that may befall our community. It's nice to be able to be proactive about things and maintain, instead of just reacting to situations as they arrive. And that's one of the goals I would love to see Resilient Hartford be more.
Dan, you look confused. Did you just lose them? You're muted.
Yes, did you lose them too?
Yeah, I see you perfectly and clearly.
So they're frozen.
And maybe the attendees can hear us and see us, but
No, yeah, exactly. But yeah, they froze. Whatever. Oh, they're coming back. There we go. Thanks, Rocket. Maybe they're coming back. I'm not sure. Maybe they're still frozen. I'm not sure.
I can see them moving, but they're muted.
I can't.
Are we?
That's
Okay, how about now?
You're back.
Okay,
Dan, did you have a comment or a question?
you're muted now.
Sorry. I think you guys froze, whatever it was. I'll go to whatever, who knows. So I just wanted to say welcome back, Kyle, to the Upper Valley. I've known you for a long time. And I think you'll be a good asset. And I'm glad you've landed in Hartford to serve on this committee. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dan. We'll take a motion, Ally.
Sure. I move that we appoint Kyle Katz to the Resilient Hartford Committee for a 3-year term, beginning October 31st, 2023, and ending October 30th, 2026.
I'll second that
We have
motion.
a second from Lanny. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Unanimous? Okay. Thanks very much, Cal.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for the work that you do, and I look forward to serving the community of Hartford.
Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is to consider the reappointment of Mary Hutchins to the Conservation Commission for a 4-year term beginning October 31st, 2023 and ending October 30th, 2027. I don't believe Mary is with us here, but it is a reappointment. Any discussion, Mary?
No discussion. I just want to say, working with Mary in the Conservation Commission has been a delight. I've learned a lot from her. She's very optimistic and very talented in graphic arts. And I'm excited that she is continuing, because it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, sure,
So
absolutely.
thank you, Mary, for that.
Any other comments or discussion from the board? Manny?
Yeah, I know Mary from work on the Snowmobile Club here in Hartford. And I think that Mary is a great addition to this. So I would definitely support that. And in fact, I'll be able to make a motion on this if no other discussion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Make a motion, we reappoint Mary Hutchins to the Conservation Commission for a 4-year term beginning October 31st, 2023, ending October 30th, 2027.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Mary. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Great.
Thanks.
All right, now we'll go to the town manager's report. So I'll just turn it over to you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'll join with the rest of you to wish the community a very happy Halloween. Hope everybody's loaded up and ready to go. Since my last report, I've continued meeting with community stakeholders and members of a growing support network in and out of town. I've met with Peter Gregory of Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission, tour of the Haven with Michael Redmond, and board member Joe Major. I learned a lot about Hartford's history with promises of more to come from John Clerkin and Dave Briggs, to name a couple of prominent citizens, in separate discussions. I've also met today with School Superintendent Tom DeBalzi, had a very good chat on how the two organizations can continue to work together to the advantage of the whole community. I'll be soon meeting with Dennis Brown. I have planned a tour of the Advanced Transit Facility. I still need to have one-on-one discussion meetings with 2 select board members, but one of those will be taken care of tomorrow, Mary. And of course, it was good to renew my contacts at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, my colleagues from all across the state, on whom I probably will be calling with questions, concerns, that kind of thing going forward. And that was just a very good gathering and learned quite a bit involving, for an example, a discussion of all the grant funds that are available for DPW, both environmentally related and not. And also to learn more about the diversity, equity, and inclusion work being done by people like Abundant Sun in Vermont. I have received word today that the World War Monument Committee has reached its goal of raising $14,000 in order to earn the Better Places match funding. So it appears that the monument will be built as planned. The town's external auditors have finished their on-site work here at the town offices. They're now crunching their numbers and plan to present their findings to the select board at your November 28th meeting. The town and school meeting committee met last night, and they'd like to know from the select board if you have a date in mind for the annual public meeting, which typically has been held on the second Monday in January. They generate a flyer like this, which they post around town. And they were wondering if you would like to suggest Monday, January 8th this year. And if so, I'll be happy to communicate that back to them as a proposal.
That the budget presentation night, correct?
It's the informational night.
Budget presentation, I believe.
Yeah, that comes before a month and a half before budget and candidates night, which is in later February, as I understand it.
I've already got it in my calendar.
So I guess I'm I'm still trying to understand then why we have that one when we have budget night later on.
I think it's for things that may appear on the ballot, just
Oh,
a
okay.
kind of
I
a,
don't think we had one this past year.
Yeah, we didn't. That's why
We didn't.
That's
have
why
any
I'm
items on
questioning
the
what it
ballot.
was.
That's why.
okay. So maybe do you want to have one this year? And if so, when would you
Yeah, I
like
think
to
there'll be
schedule?
stuff, you know, on the ballot that-
If we're looking at stuff going on, if we're looking at putting up bonds,
In the
we
charter.
should definitely, in the
Yeah.
charter, yeah, bonds in the charter, we should definitely have something, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
maybe we'll pick January 8th as at least the placeholder for that.
Yeah,
Okay,
Sure.
I'll communicate that to that committee. Also should let everybody know that Vermont Small Business Administration is soliciting nominations for awards to be given to small business owners around the state. There is a flyer on their website in which people can nominate people or small businesses that are making life better in their communities. So the suggestion is that if you know of a small business that you think is deserving of recognition, all you need to do is reply to this email, and I can give you the email. State the name of the business along with the owner's name and the award category you want to nominate them for. And they will follow up, SBA will follow up with that business to see if they wish to compete for the award. It's that simple, they say. Deadline for that is December 8th. And if you have questions, again, contact the Vermont Small Business Association. Finally, it appears after further consultations that our HR director and my executive assistant, Paula Nolte, may be able to perform some of her work remotely as she convalesces from her procedure, which I think began today, one of her procedures. Lana and Paula have also planned together and with other staff for their absences that are upcoming and worked with staff to assure that there's coverage of key functions. And so we appreciate Paula and Lana for thinking ahead.
Any questions for John?
Later, budget overview.
Rocket, Dan, any questions for John?
I do have SIGAX. I'll just go through briefly.
Yeah,
There's not
sure.
too much that I wanted to highlight beyond what I had in terms of my own comments. But in land development, I'll note that 48 dwelling units by BlackRock Investment of one multi-unit building on the corner of Sykes and Hickory Ridge is being reviewed, as is 192 dwelling units by BlackRock Investment in 4 multi-unit buildings on the corner of Sykes and Hickory Ridge, and that 18 dwelling units by Northern Stage in 3 multi-unit buildings on Gate Street are all being reviewed by the planning department. In terms of,
I just have a quick question, because it was one of my questions when I was reading the significant activity report. Do you know, do any of us know whether these 48 dwelling units on sites and 192, whether they're going to be market rate or whether they're going to be mixed?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I mean, I can respond. I think it's possible, because I think there's also another, I think there's a Haven project also on that the next planning commission agenda is jam-packed. And the applications will be part of the paperwork that you can look at. I don't know offhand, but I also think it's likely that those 2 applications might be tabled this next meeting. So I would check with Joanne in the planning department. She could answer any of those questions.
And then just to finish out the SIGAX, the Hartford Energy Commission held a residential building energy standard, AKA Energy Code training on Tuesday, October 24th with Efficiency Vermont. That presentation was recorded and will be viewable on the Hartford Energy Commission's webpage. And we'd like to congratulate Deputy Chief Jason Zora, Captain Jack Hedges, Fire Marshal Town Peltier, and firefighters Aaron Daughter, Jeremy Rada, and Peter McMillan. They were awarded a unit citation at the New Hampshire Fire Service and Emergency Medical Services Award Ceremony in Concord for their role in a successful water rescue in Plainfield, New Hampshire last year.
John, I had asked about the, in the finance, section of the SIGEX, there's a reference to current policies being reviewed. Do you know if that meant like all policies?
And I don't,
Okay,
I don't know.
I'd be curious about that. And then.
I think we're gonna have plenty of time with Kim coming up in these next few
Gail,
sessions.
yeah.
I'm sorry, with
Yeah.
Gail. Yes.
Okay, great. And then my other questions relating to, I'll wait for the budget overview for that. Thanks.
Questions for John? Seeing none. Thank you, John.
Sure.
Our next item under board reports, motions and ordinances
No,
is,
wait, sorry, there's a hand up.
okay,
Dan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Paula and Lana for their for looking ahead and making sure we're covered for town business moving forward. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. Thank you.
thanks, Dan. Okay, so our item up next is the fire chief vehicle purchase. So, Scott?
Sure. You have the information in your agenda memorandum, but to summarize, during the FY25 budget development, we were also looking at replacing a 2014 Ford Interceptor currently used by the fire marshal. And in speaking with our fleet vendors, Colonial Municipal Group, they urged that if the town was going to do this purchase, that we do it now based on market conditions they're seeing, the current strikes going on with automotive manufacturers, that if fleet vehicles were available now, it'd be advantageous for us to consider purchasing, anticipating that rates would be going up and vehicles would be unsure of in 2024 for this style. So we are bringing this forward for you today to consider a purchase through the fire reserve account.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yep. Manny?
Yeah, one thing I read under the discussion part of this is that the vehicle conforms with the specifications in the police department will streamline preventive maintenance for public safety mechanic. What does that mean?
So that means we're buying the same order that the police department's got 2 on order now.
So this is a police interceptor package?
It's the same vehicle. Yep.
With a police interceptor?
It is. It's the Tahoe PPV.
We need a police interceptor package for the fire department?
It's cheaper, actually, Lanny, than purchasing the SSV style. The admin version costs a little bit more. And in talking with a mechanic, the brakes are heavier on this vehicle. The suspension's heavier on the vehicle, and the towing capacity is the same.
Okay, the other question I had about this is that we had been hooked on, for some areas, doing leasing versus owning equipment. So was it considered a lease on this vehicle at all, or are we just gonna?
No, I had not considered a lease at all. We have not leased a vehicle in the fire department.
Okay, I understand that, but I know at some point in town, we have leased before. And I didn't know if there was a, opportunity to lease and whether that would be in the best interest of the town or not. Something to look forward to, something to look at down the road. I know that vehicles in the fire department are turned down to next in grade after they, so I know that we keep them around for quite a while, and that's good that we do that, maintain them to do so. But I would personally like to see us get away from the leasing aspect and get into the purchasing and make sure that we have reserves for that. So I'm happy with this, but still got to throw it out there because it was brought up in the past and supposedly leasing is a great deal. So
other questions, Kim?
The finance director has explained to us in the past that municipal leases are essentially the same outcome as purchase. It's not like a individual.
Yeah, and I don't see that as possible.
Yeah, can I clarify too? Because I did say no, we don't, but Kim is right now that she says that the ladder truck that we're currently paying for is called a municipal lease, but it is what they call a lease purchase. All it is a financing term for municipalities so that you can purchase a vehicle over time. And in that case, you are correct. The term is called leasing, but it is a purchase. It's 10 annual payments and you own it at the end.
So it is not a lease that the vehicle gets turned back over again.
No, the town of Hartford will own it.
All right, that's the thing that I guess think of a traditional lease as being you turn the vehicle in at the end of its lease term. So, okay, but
Other
that's
questions for Scott?
I'll be willing to make a motion.
Sure. I'll take a motion.
I move to authorize the town manager to purchase a 2023 Chevy Tahoe from Colonial Municipal Group for an amount not to exceed $70,000 and authorize the purchase of the vehicle and associated equipment to be paid from the fire reserve account.
A second.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Mary. Any discussion? Yes, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, unanimous. Thanks, Scott. Next item, community nurse discussion.
I'll need, Mr. Chair, I'll need presenter privileges to bring up a PowerPoint slide.
Oh, should be able to.
So we don't have anything in the packet about this. No.
Yeah, we do.
You just
Yeah.
have a
Page
memo and I'll introduce it in just a second. You can go ahead.
Are you on the Zoom?
I am on the Zoom.
Okay. You can- okay, great.
Yeah, but I
Just
mean,
need to
presentation wise, it just,
share my screen. How do I do that?
You're down to the little.
I see whiteboard. Oh, share screen. Got it.
just a discussion issue.
Okay, for a few years now during budget discussions, we've talked about the increase of emergency calls within the fire department, increasing kind of progressively for 10 years anyways. And there's been some interest and some questions from the board over time about what can we do to proactively take a crack at reducing EMS responses, which I've explained before are probably the most expensive form of healthcare you can receive, an ambulance transport and admission into the emergency room. So since that time, I've been talking to my peers in emergency services, the fire chiefs of our local communities, Hanover and Lebanon. They've integrated some of these community nurse type programs. And speaking with members of that community, I was introduced to Katie Williams and her team, and Katie's a Hartford resident and also the Heartland Town nurse. And actually we have Dr. Kalish with us tonight as well, who is with the Community Nurse Connection. So I've asked Katie to we've been talking on the side, and I think Kim's been involved in some of these discussions about what a community nurse would do to benefit the town of Hartford. So we're here to kind of go over what that is. And since we're in the budget cycle too, I provided a number of what we think it would cost to bring on a full-time position. But I will turn it over to Katie and she can kind of introduce what the community nursing program is.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Chief Cooney and John and Select Board for having us tonight. My name is Katie and I have lived in Hartford for 15 years. I moved here to start my nursing career. I live with my in-laws in Queechee. I have many friends with aging parents. And I am also the town nurse, and I have been for 5 years down in Heartland, Vermont. I work with an organization called Aging in Heartland. So I am here representing the field of nursing, and also representing the concern for citizens in our community who would benefit from nursing services. And my colleague Don Kolish with the Community Nurse Connect is here tonight to co-present with me and just share a little bit of information about what the community nurse is and what we do in the different towns that we serve. Go to the next.
Sorry, I was too fast.
Okay, I think we need to go back one.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, we have about 15 minutes, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna briefly explore what a community nurse is and how we work with the individual and how we work within the communities, and how we're different from other services that people typically associate us with. And so here we kind of map out what is it that we do for the individual, and you can read those bullet points. We do a lot of case management. We do in-home support for people if they're willing to have us come into their home. We'll meet them somewhere public if that's what feels most safe to them. And we really meet them where they are. And we call it client-centered care. We work first with their goals, and often this looks like, typically in most town nurse programs, we're working with our senior communities. Some town nurse programs have expanded to other populations, but most commonly we're working with frail, vulnerable elders. And so I want to tell a little story that kind of draws on the relationship between the individual and the community, because most programs offer community engagement, and this can look like clinics. This can look like educational seminars, socialization opportunities. And I want to tell a little story because I think stories are important, of a client that I worked with in Heartland. And we host a blood pressure clinic at the local food shelf every other week. And sometimes we go and we just converse and we just share food, and we don't really achieve any level of intervention, but we're building relationship all along. And this is a recent story of an 84-year-old woman who grew up in Heartland and raised her children in Heartland, and she lives alone. And she would come every Friday quite religiously to the blood pressure clinic. And we started to notice that she wasn't coming as often. And when she came, she was speaking more slowly and was maybe her hair wasn't brushed. And during the blood pressure clinic, we saw that her blood pressure was high. And so finally, she let us in her home after many, many years of not wanting us to come to her home. And when we got there, we saw that all of her medications were scattered all over her house. The dishes weren't done. She had previously been a very tidy person. Well, through a few visits, we were able to do case management, coordinate with her primary care, really get an accurate list of what her medications were. We were able to get all of her children onto one virtual call, and it was very clear that she was having progressive dementia, which is gradual and you can't always catch it when it's happening, but it becomes clear at some point that a change is needed. And now she's living with one of her children, and she has stabilized. And so that's an example of a good outcome where we're bridging this community presence that sometimes feels like it's not intervention-based or outcome-based, and seeing impact in the home and in the community, and working with healthcare systems and working with families to bring safety to our patients. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. And this slide, I feel like one of the questions that I get more often than not is, well, what about the VNA? Or what about VNH, and aren't you doing the same exact thing as them? And so here we are kind of distinguishing between, on the left-hand side, we're looking at what we call skilled nursing services. And this is typically in our community, VNH, Vallada, and Lake Sunapee. And then on the right-hand column, we have the community nurse, which could be a town nurse or a parish nurse or a community nurse. And the 5 points that we're making are that services under skilled nursing support are really driven by Medicare-based systems. So if Medicare can reimburse, then services can be provided. In the community nurse category, these services are free and they're available to anybody. And so in the second category, we're talking about the distinction between being homebound. Now, if a client is able to drive or be driven to an appointment, then they may not qualify for home-based services. So the distinction with community-based care is that the nurse determines the service need. Moving down, we're looking at how do we get access to our patients. In these traditional skilled nursing services, a referral needs to be placed by the provider, by the physician. And typically in our programs, we see that neighbors or family members or doctors or agencies can make referrals. and that we can provide services as long as needed and with as much frequency as needed that is in alignment with the client's goals. So the real distinction here is like costs and access. And the thing that I want to just tell one more quick story of a client that I worked with who, when I met her, she was referred to us to the emergency services in Heartland. And she had been falling frequently and needing multiple lift assists without transfer to the hospital. Well, upon our first visit, we learned that she had been essentially discharged from her primary care. She had been very hostile with the hospital, and they said, we refuse to give you any more care. This is a woman with multiple diagnoses. She cannot walk. She has diabetes, severe cardiac disease, severe chronic pain management, and severe depression, the root of her hostility, really. And she had no access to care unless she was using the emergency system. We've been working with her for 4 years now, and we've gotten her connected to home-based primary care, home-based psych services, ambulance transport through grant funding. I mean, this is just an example. She never would have been able to get skilled nurse care because she didn't have an acute need that was billable by Medicare. So to me, that's like a really prime example of how the expansiveness of community nurse work can meet some of the gaps that are not being currently met. Okay. I hand this over to John. Did I introduce you?
I'll do it.
This is Don Polish, and he is, I'm so grateful he's here tonight. He's such an ally to our work. He's our medical advisor through the Community Nurse Connect, and he's been a rural family medicine doc since 1980 in the Upper Valley, and is also co-chair of Community Nurse Connect. So I just thank you so much for coming. Please share about this lovely organization.
Thanks, Katie, and many thanks to the board for letting me come. So I started my practice not in the Upper Valley. I was up in Monroe, New Hampshire. We used to laugh that you guys called yourselves the Upper Valley because we're 50 miles upper of you. And the reason that I have gotten involved with community nurses now in my retirement, I'm a family doctor. I was at Dartmouth Hitchcock for many years and also practiced at the VA. Is because these community nurses remind me of me. They take care of people in community. And it is a complex process that wonderful things can happen when people who otherwise are falling through the cracks get cared for. Program started about just over 10 years ago when a local doctor and nurse set up a program in Lyme and in Thetford, and then ended up designing an umbrella organization called the Upper Valley Community Nurse Project, which a couple of years ago was rebranded as Community Nurse Connection. And the basis of this and the reason for it is that although the US healthcare system works miracles, it really is based on reimbursement, with the exception actually of the VA, which is basically the equivalent of a single payer healthcare system. But outside of the VA, in order for services to be delivered, they have to be billed. And so therefore there are holes in the services that we can provide. The people that most often fall through those holes are the frail elderly in our communities. They can get connected to services through their relationship with a primary care doctor or with specialty doctors. Sometimes they're associated with social services. Sometimes they're connected with the Bugby Senior Service Center, but oftentimes they're home. Some of them have family who look in on them, but many of them do not have family around. And so these people are the clients who the community nurses take care of. The community nurses take referrals from anywhere. Often they get referrals in many of our other towns. We have them in at this point, 11 towns in the Upper Valley and beyond, Thetford, Lyme, Hanover, Lebanon, down to Londonderry and Weston and South Londonderry, Heartland, and in the larger towns in particular, but also in the smaller ones, many of the referrals come through either the firefighters or police officers who find a call to the home of somebody who has needs. And they provide the urgent need, they pick that patient back up, and then they don't know what else they can do. So by making a referral to the community nurse with some skills that are unique to nurses, they understand the medical conditions, they understand medication. They are, at this point, I think, the most trusted profession in the US. I think, Katie, to my shame, you guys passed us. And nurses are more trusted than doctors now. They're smart, they're responsible, and because they do not have to bill, they can go back in as often as they're needed. The services are usually delivered at home. And one of the major questions that we ask at the Community Nurse Connection, where we provide services to those nurses, is what is the return on investment? The nurses are paid either by the municipality or by a nonprofit that is established in order to sponsor them, sometimes by churches. They are hired for a certain number of hours per week. All of our nurses end up, and I look to Katie with a little bit of trepidation, but they usually end up working more hours than they bill for, and that is budgeted for. And then they might come back to their sponsor and say, we need to have more hours. The number of hours is keyed usually to the population size, and we have data sets from all of these other towns so we can provide guidance and support for you. The funding, again, can be through philanthropy, through the town budget, and then the nurse just provides the service. They stick with the client as long as it's needed, and then they can discharge the patient. But they can go back in as soon as the firefighter says she's falling again. The nurse can go in. Now, let's be clear, the nurse is not going to be able to go there at 2 a.m. and pick up the person. However, by doing the falls assessment, by developing the relationship with the frail elderly, they are able to decrease the number of falls, decrease the number of emergency room visits, decrease the number of readmissions to hospital. One of the services, I think we probably can go to the next slide, that we provide is a documentation system so that the nurse for each encounter is able to record what services they provide and what the outcomes are, whether they make a referral for social services, they link people with their doctors. During COVID, they actually were helping frail elderly get onto telehealth. And I really appreciate the word bridging. We provide monthly nursing support meetings, and Katie and her colleagues will bring cases to the group, and they help each other figure out how to help patients. Access to expert advice from our medical director somewhere. So the nurses give me a call, and although I do not have a doctor-patient relationship with the patients, I'm able to work with, and those are many of our nurses and a couple of staff. We have nursing resources on our website that we maintain for about medications and social services. We provide assistance with fundraising advocacy. That's less important when there's a municipal sponsor. We provide a small grant for the nurses so that if they need new shoes or they need a new stethoscope or they want to attend a continuing nursing education program, we provide $500 grants for that. And we provide funding to start new communities. new community programs. Those are $5,000 grants that we provide. Bottom line is, before I ask Katie to go back over this slide, shall I? Okay. This was just for one quarter, the second quarter of 2023. As you see, the lead interventions that we did, that our nurses did, they helped the patients communicate with their primary care doctor. They provided assistance to the elderly with their chronic disease management. So for instance, if they no longer can figure out how to use their diabetes glucose monitor, nurses help them do that. They often provide assistance with symptoms. A patient will say, I'm coughing more. Should I go to my doctor? The nurse is able to assist them with that. They provide assistance with medication reconciliation. Many of their clients will have dozens of bottles sitting around, and they need help figuring out how to fill their dispenser. But most important, and I actually thought that the top one was a little bit more than the communicating with doctor, they provide emotional support, and particularly during COVID, the social isolation that our frail elders suffered was really dramatic. And our nurses set up phone calls. 10 minutes a week can make a huge difference. And then the in-person visits. The other, next slide, that our documentation system can provide for you would be some of what the return is on investment. So reduce anxiety and worry, reduce social isolation, improved understanding of medications, and ability to remain safely at home. So it's going to be, I can't tell Chief Cooney that if there is a community nurse for 20 hours a week, that he will have a 10% reduction in falls. But I can tell you that all of our other communities report that they note fewer calls to emergency services and less need for personnel at safety. Chief Cooney is noted that the community closest to Hartford in its demographics and size locally is Lebanon. And they have a unique experiment they're doing of linking an EMT to work closely with the community nurse. So they're experimenting with different models. And I think that community nurse connection is able to help different communities communicate with each other. So if you decide that this is a project that you would want to embark on, our organization would help. There are many other approaches that can be taken to the challenges the frail elder provide. There are other community health workers, there are social workers, and I joined this group, and I'm actually the chair of the board now as well as the medical advisor, because I think these community nurses are just like an old-fashioned GP. That is offering compassion, skill, and availability. So it's a program that I urge you to consider when you're trying to think about how to provide services to those who are otherwise falling through the net. Chief, I think you were going to say something about that.
Sure, I just wanted to roll on some of the data points for you. And basically we know that when I've come to you before and we've talked about, for example, the write-off we do every year and some other examples of that, is there certain areas that we can't collect on? And but from that data, we know that our greatest population for transport and our greatest people that we're billing are in the Medicare, Medicaid kind of group of insurers. So we do see a high percentage of those patients. And then looking at the numbers between 21 and 22, we saw a total of 3,685 patients during that period. Those are ambulance calls and ambulance interactions. Of those, 1,852 individuals were of the age 65 or older category. So over 52 over 50% of the calls that Hartford's responding to are of this population that is directly served by a community nurse type program. So that's why we brought it before you today. Like I said, we are in the midst of, budget season. And if it was the will of the board at some point to entertain these kind of things, in the next few months would be the time to put it in. But I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm sure either one of our presenters tonight can answer any questions you might have.
How much is reimbursed by Medicare for an ambulance call? Because I had one and it was not reimbursed at all.
Yeah, so
And it's over $1,000 to get to DHMC.
You're correct. We bill about $1,000, and the reimbursement that we receive from Medicaid or Medicaid, I don't have it in front of me, but it is less than a third typically of what we're billing.
Yeah, and I think probably you're answering this, but I noticed in the SIGAP, I was looking, and we've talked about this before, the medical assists were 11.76%, the EMS calls were 49.02. You add those together, that's 60.78%. And I was saying, is the data close to that the majority of those are elderly, the frail elderly?
Especially in the no transport category. We do go to quite a few of those, and that part falls into that 50% of what they are. Yeah. And it becomes non-reimbursable.
Right.
So you're sending, this is a significant cost. I think you had a slide of that. There's a significant cost to, putting an ambulance on the road and the two individuals and those, and if that could be prevented, and not directly, but through education and through them and the community nurse engaging with the individual for prevention purposes, then I think you'd probably see some reductions in those areas.
Wendy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As someone who has been a caregiver for my father for the last 3 years, and I was a caregiver for my mother before that. My father's 89, and I can completely understand the difficulties that families have and the difficulty that seniors have. This has been the hardest job I've ever had, being a caregiver for my father. And luckily, he's a veteran, 100% disabled, and he gets help from the VA. So we have help from the VA. I honestly don't know how families do it that do not have that help. I think the community nurse is a blessing for those individuals. With that said, though, I do have a question about, you've been with Heartland for how long now?
5 years almost.
5 years. So Dr. Kolich was speaking about there's no numbers that you really come up with for data to represent the number or the drop in call volume. Can you give me just a significant wild ass guess to say what you think the reduction would be? I mean, I would think it'd be something that we could track, that'd be a data point you could track, because Heartland, I mean, in Hartford, we have the benefit of having a full-time ambulance service, whereas Heartland, they do not. So I can see it as an extreme advantage for rural communities like that.
We're starting to measure it more specifically. So with the help of the Community Nurse Connect, they've brought our system, which is called RedCap, our electronic medical record. They've created an app for it, which has allowed it to be more accessible from the home setting where we don't typically have Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And so we're starting to more specifically focus on that. I don't have, I'm not even gonna try and guess for you.
That's fine.
If I were to look at my caseload and think of like, how do we actually measure if we prevented an ER visit? There are some cases where that's really black and white. And there are a lot of cases where that's not so easy to measure. But we are trying to do that. And I think we'll have better data coming from Community Nurse Connect over the next year.
And then I did another question about Can you provide vaccines such as COVID or flu vaccines?
Yeah,
to
so
patients?
that's a really great question. What we can do is help coordinate vaccine clinics. We can bring education to the client home about where they can access vaccines. We can help like our 90-year-old clients who can only register online, we can help them do that.
But can you administer at the home?
We cannot administer.
Okay.
And the reason we cannot administer is because we do not work under medical orders. It's a skilled nursing task.
Okay.
So that is, we're not able to provide direct care.
And then you briefly touched on it, but the mental health piece
Mhm.
that goes along with this, do you have particular staff that deals with the mental health needs of aging seniors that are part of your largest group of individuals?
So it's so community specific, and in Heartland, we do not have a specific person that we can call on. Some communities have social workers. We are versed in what resources are available, and we make referrals and follow through on whether or not that referral was successful. It's a dire need.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
For
Believe me,
mental health
believe me,
for
I
every-
completely understand. I'm going through all
Yeah.
that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just, but as Don pointed out, like emotional support is one of our most measured outcomes. And I think that anecdotally, a lot of my clients, like our caseload is 45 right now, I think they would all say that our relationship makes a difference in their mental health.
Thank you.
And I think we were careful to really focus this on this current population we're talking about, the over 65 too. I think we saw a good example with Kelsey when we had her as our social worker, that the need for services is so great, we quickly overwhelmed her with everything. So if we had somebody that we were concerned about failure to thrive, not suffering at home, we gave it to Kelsey. If it was a substance abuse disorder issue, we gave it to Kelsey. If it was a mental health disorder issue, we gave it to Kelsey. So it pretty much became a jack of all trades, master of none kind of scenario. So I think having social worker as a function is good. I think if we're going to go down the path of community nursing, we let that be a standalone thing affecting that population. And I think that kind of collaborative effect is probably going to net us a better solution and outcome in the end, rather than trying to all encompass a multitude of different situations into one person.
Okay.
In the 11 towns that there's currently community nurses, are most of them full-time, or you mentioned 20 hours a week? What's the average in terms of how many hours they?
The only towns that have a full-time community nurse are Lebanon, actually is Lebanon and Lyme. And so Lyme is staffed more than the other towns. Most of the other towns range between 10 and 20 hours per week.
And are those, is there a workspace provided? I'm just trying to think of this as an actual position, like what that looks like in terms of benefits and workspace.
So we have a relatively new nurse in Tunbridge who now has a little bit of space in their town offices. But most of them, and the nurses in Lebanon have office space in the primary firehouse. But most of the others have a cell phone and a callback number. They work from home and they work out of their cars.
Yeah. Surprised.
Yeah.
In Heartland, we're 30 hours a week, and a very nice couple lets us occupy their basement and shares a lot of resource with us, which is awesome.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's good. And Katie has a partner that share those 30 hours. I will say just one thing that you should know is that there's a nursing shortage right now.
Yeah.
And setting up a program will then put you into the recruiting business. And it's hard. What we found is that the nurses that work out best are those that are from that community. They may well have had a long career and now are looking for a end of career job that doesn't require them to work 40 hours or more a week. They may have a family and they don't want to work 40 hours a week. So we seem to be getting young nurses and old nurses, and not many that are right in the middle. But that will be one of the challenges that you face. And we've provided assistance to new programs in terms of write an ad, where to publish the ad, follow up. We can possibly help with interviewing. So again, our organization, which is Community Nurse Connection, and we've got a web page, we see ourselves as being the people that will help you have a successful program.
Kim, do you have any more questions?
I think that's it for now, but
Okay.
we can talk about this all day.
More questions?
There's one more quick follow-up
Yeah,
question.
Andy, go ahead.
Is this a program that you can see operating at a LPN level, or does it require an RN level?
It currently requires an RN level.
Okay.
But one of the challenges is that there are very few LPNs out there now. Programs have faded away.
Okay. Thank you.
And with apology, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, sure.
that I and our executive director, Kristen Barnum, who couldn't be here tonight, are more than happy to consult with Chief Cooney, formally or informally with the board. If you do go down this route, if you want to consult with us on budget and salary, we're available.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in. Very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, our next item is John's going to give us, I believe, a overview of the charter revision process. If you remember, we have a charter. Well, we have the revised charter that was given to us last year, and it's here with the select board for us to revise further.
And maybe the board can be helpful just laying out some of that history for me, or the Charter Revision Commission itself. What I've really done is just talked with the VLCT, and they've given us a 2 or 3 page primer on the process of revising or amending or adopting a charter. So that kind of lays out the statutes. But maybe you could give us an overview on how you got involved in this business, what your charge was. Did the select board appoint you? Have you come up with a proposal? These kinds of things maybe would be helpful for the discussion. And for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can hear me. Let's do them one at a time until I get rolling.
Sure. So tell
Just
me,
identify yourself.
yes.
Lynn Bohai.
And Lynn, how did the town begin the process of considering amending its charter, as far as you know?
The charter has, one of the last provisions is that it must be looked at every, I think it's 5 years.
Okay. And at that time, did the select board ask you to develop a
No,
committee
they asked,
and to develop
they
its
asked-
proposals?
They put out, it's time to do this again, please apply.
Okay,
So since I have been in the legislature and was on the committee that looked at charters a lot of my time there, it made sense. And I'd never been involved in the charter before, except listening to it as an audience member. I decided it was time to be a volunteer.
and how was the committee or the commission appointed or developed?
All appointees to committees are adopted by, are chosen by the select board through an interview process.
Okay, and have you conducted hearings at which you've discussed the charter and the changes that you wish to make to it?
We gave the select board and the school board a document in November, I think, maybe October and November last year.
Okay,
There were some controversial issues,
okay,
and I think that's why it stopped.
And as I understand it, Mr. Chairman, at that point, the town select board heard some input from town staffers about concerns about some portions of your proposed revisions. And I think that's kind of where things have stood
Yeah,
since
that's
that
where
time.
things have stood. So I mean, the first thing I think, or one of the first things we did do is to get everyone on the same page about what the language, should be, if we've got concerns from the staff, I can't imagine it'll take a long time to sort of all get on the same page. And, if we can't get agreement on those particular sections of language, we can just kind of move forward and leave them out, because we got the current charter language as well.
I think
so. I mean, that's where it is. It's with us. I think the first thing is sort of coming to agreement on what language we want in it, sort of resolving those differences and
the timetable in which to do it. I
Yes.
have heard some concern expressed by some staff that if the intent is to present a proposed charter revision document for town meeting, that time grows awfully short to accomplish a thorough review of each of these changes and to get comfortable with your language and then to present something in time for town meeting. That's the concern I've heard about, that maybe we're late in the game for this town meeting.
FX has his hand up.
Okay, FX.
Do you want to do that now?
Sure.
Go ahead, FX.
Yes. Hi. Thank you very much. Let's see here. I want to get my video on if I can. I guess not. I don't see the option. Okay. Yes. So I just want to clarify a couple things. First is that the Charter Revision Committee consisted of a member of the school board, a member of the select board, 2 members appointed by the select board, 2 members appointed by the school board, and 1 member appointed jointly. I was the joint appointee. Lynn and I were the co-chair. We met regularly all during 2022. And we kept the select board and the school board appraised of our progress. The meetings were all open meetings. We took testimony from people in the town. And at the and then in September, we produced an initial draft or a final draft that we brought to both the school board and the select board, and we had it vetted by the attorney whose firm had previously done the charter work for the town of Hartford. And we were looking forward to having a series of conversations with both the school board and the select board during October and November with the goal of having the charter and any items that might be voted separately from the revised charter presented at a public hearing at Info Night, which would meet the statutory requirement for a public hearing with 10 days after the charter had been posted and 30 days before the vote, with the second public hearing to be held on town meeting day, the Saturday prior to the ballot on voting day, also called town meeting day in Vermont, but under our charter called voting day in the town of Hartford. Things kind of, evaporated. I think that there was a lot on people's plates. I think that some of the concerns that were raised by staff really didn't get an adequate airing in public. there's, we provided a lot of written material, which may have just been, too much, really reading and digestion. So I really sympathize with the school board and the select board, in terms of trying to consume that last fall. But I would strongly push back on the notion that we're too deep into the process. The charge that the committee had was to kind of clean up and get the charter to be better aligned with current practice, particularly in terms of the distinction, the elected officials versus appointed officials. And so the core of the charter changes is really a cleanup rewrite of the charter. And then there are, I think, 3 different provisions that probably all, if I were on the select board, I would be recommending that we put up in addition to here's the new charter to approve, yes or no, then 3 different votes. Do you support adding this to the charter? Do you support adding that to the charter? Do you support adding this third thing to the charter? And there could be a robust discussion in town about each of those items. But I do think that the substantive work has been done, and that and really.
Sorry, if you could just sum up. We had our timer go off.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was a timer. I'm sorry. I really was reaching a conclusion.
Yeah.
To say that, I think that at the next say 3 select board meetings, devoting a half an hour of discussion to this would get both the school board and select board comfortable with advancing the charter to the ballot, and it would be a positive for the town, because it would make our kind of fundamental law of the town, I think, a lot cleaner and easier for everyone to understand. Thank you.
Thanks, FX. Yeah, I'd like to, just speaking personally, I'd like to see us move forward with this. I think it's important, to get this done. There's some things, as FX mentioned, that are best probably given to the public to decide on, separately from just the parts of the charter that are, sort of clean up language. Although it looked like in what you got, John, they were supposed to vote on every proposal separately. So, is that right? So that may just be built into it. But whatever we can do to sort of speed it along over the next, and doing it in chunks over the next couple of meetings, I think might be a good idea. Allie and then Lanny.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. So at this point, with the revisions that have been made thus far, when we be stepping back into the process, if we go in that direction, would it be in the hands of the select board to carry on the process, or would we need to reinstate the charter commission? Or is at this point, your work is, the charter commission is done? And
we dissolved at voting day in March.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd like to tackle that if I may.
Sure.
At this point, it is in the hands of the select board and the school board. They will both have to advance the same item on both ballots, because the charter does cover the 2 separate independent governments in the town of Hartford, and the charter commission, its work is done in terms of developing something that can be put in front of the voters, with whatever modifications the school board and the select board decide to make. And principally, those modifications would be to say, look, we're going to lift this piece out and vote on it separately. It's the way that we did our work was we presented it as a single document, but that is not how it needs to be presented to the voters. What you need to present to the voters is, number one, here's a rewrite of the charter, and then 2, 3, and 4. Do you want to add this, that, and the third thing? And you may decide that you don't want to put one of those items in front of the voters. That would be fine as well. But you do have a cleaned up charter. That was the main goal that our committee had. We've provided it to you, and none of the objections that we've heard involve anything in that core rewrite.
Okay. Thanks, FX. Lanny? Or nope.
I just
Well,
had
Ali, you do a follow-up.
Yeah, I just had one more question, and I think FX, maybe you already spoke to this, but just to ask one more time. So it sounds like, because we were also talking about last year, there being a couple of, I don't know if contentious is the word, but more hot topic items in a couple of those. One of them being, maybe the just cause eviction amendment, related amendment, something around sales tax. And so it sounds like in this process, because inevitably we'd be pulling out specific pieces for folks to respond to and vote on, that at the very least, if we wanted to make sure that we put before the voters at least a couple of the bigger items or suggested amendments, we could still do that as part of the process.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Lanny?
Yeah, Ali just barely touched on it, but as I stated after I went up to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns presentation in Burlington, one of the things that we as a town are failing on is we are failing to take advantage of money that is readily available through a local option tax. We need, if nothing else, to get this before the voters. And we can sell this to the voters because this is going to basically help to pay for our infrastructure needs in the town of Hartford, and it will end up reducing taxes. There is a substantial amount of money that we can get by going with local option tax. And we have been failing to get this before the voters. If nothing else, this has to be done before town meeting and get on the ballot. I realize that the rental housing is probably not something that's going to be able to bump along, but we are killing ourselves by not taking advantage of the local option tax.
So I would say that, yes, that's part of the charter. That's something I think we have some consensus on the board.
Could I ask a question of the experts who've been involved in this process for a lot of time? Is it your understanding, based on your research over the years, that the select board's only role is to decide when to present your proposals to the voters and in what form? Or does the board have any authority to override any suggestions or proposals you've made on certain topics?
Yes. Well, actually, if the first were true, that the select
FX, I think Lynn
was going to field that question.
As we were talking before, that was one of the things that I was going to say, that we have never heard what the department heads had to say, and have no idea. And so for the future, I see two paths. One is you guys divide it into sections and have it on your agendas and work out the language yourselves. Or number two is appoint a new committee and give us that information that we will then, perhaps if it's better for you, we will parse that into sections and bring it back to you for you to talk about it, to tell us what you think.
John, I was the liaison from the select board for the charter committee, and we had this pretty well under wraps, I thought. And then it got jumped over to town staff, and there was consensus to pull out the contentious areas of the charter to bring before the voters and bring before the select board. It got hung up when it went to town staff. I don't know why it was such a contentious issue with staff. However, that's where the lag was. We have never received the full input from staff to know what the concerns were.
Right.
We have received concerns from the town clerk, and that's the only member of staff we've really got any feedback from.
And just to respond to you, I haven't dug deep into what those concerns are. I just know that
No, I
there are some
understand.
concerns.
Yeah.
My question for FX and Lynn were basically, what tools do you believe the select board has as its disposal, either simply to reformat your proposal, or does the board have the authority to ignore it altogether or in certain ways?
Yeah, the board has the absolute authority to ignore it.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that
Hold on.
if you read the charter to say that when the charter committee brings something forward, the select board and the school board are obligated to put it on the ballot. The fact of the matter is that already hasn't been done, and there's been no consequences. And that has never been the practice in town. The very first charter that was done with an agreement that whatever that committee came up with would be put in front of the voters. But subsequent to that, all of the other charter commissions have brought the recommended changes or rewrites to the select board and the school board, and there have been modifications made by those boards prior to it being presented on the ballot. And so the select board and the school board, they are the ones who are going to put this on the ballot. It's not being put on the ballot by petition, and the reading of the line about presenting it to the voters is just, it's not in conformance with more than a decade of practice in this town.
So Lynn, we've both been in Montpelier. So but my understanding is that this is like when the bill gets introduced and it's sent to committee and we decide what changes we want to make and then we vote it out. So I think what would be helpful over the next couple of meetings is take a look at the language that the Charter Commission gave us, figure out what we want to change, if anything, then make sure we get it voted out in time to meet all the statutory deadlines. I mean, that seems like what our job is, if we want to do this. Kim?
And I just forwarded because the draft charter revisions weren't put on the website, which I think is reasonable, but so I just forwarded the draft revisions and also the town clerk's comments to John and the board for a refresher.
So do we feel as a board like we want to get this moving and spend some time over the next couple meetings or however long it takes to get something done?
I'd be supportive of that. And I know, Lynn, you've been trying to say something too, so maybe I'll pass back to you in a second. And Rocket and Dan, yeah. But just to flag too, because this is also something the school board needs to weigh in on. Mm-hmm. So want to make sure that we might make this decision to move forward, but we'd want to check in with them as well.
Right. Rocket?
Rocket lowered.
Or Dan, whoever.
If you'll take me?
Yes.
I am fully supportive of moving forward with this. I think there's not just Lanny, but Lanny made a great point about us moving forward with option tax. I do think that I want to be gentle on town staff and that process, because we have been through a lot of transition through staff and through leadership. And so, and ourselves on the select board getting up to speed. So I do think this is a good year for us to press forward with it. I am supportive of that. I do also think that there are a few aspects of the charter that probably merit pretty robust debate. And it might be the case that I think we should keep our minds open to the fact that we might need to parcel out some of the less controversial things that we can just make sure we get past this year, and then potentially leaving room and oxygen for further debate, which may extend past this year's vote timeline. But being able to sort of segment that out piecemeal, I guess is the right word.
Thanks, Rocket. Dan, did you have a comment or question?
Yes. So first of all, I wanted to thank Lynn and the committee for stepping up, and especially Lynn, who served in the legislature, who knows how that process works at the state level, for potentially moving this forward. But there are a couple of things that we brought up this evening that I don't want to rush this through. I think it's really important that Lisa, as the town clerk, has stepped up and provided a lot of well-documented concerns that she has. I want us as a board, if possible, to reach out to the other departments and make sure they have reviewed it and have a chance to sort of look at things, because this is not something that happens every year. It happens every 5 to 10 years. So if there are issues that get changed, it could have a significant impact for a long term on departments. And finally, these employees that we have, we need to respect them. And they've been here, they're not new department heads. They've been here for a long time. And they've taken the time to really significantly document their concerns. And it's not, it's in no disrespect to the committee that has done all their work, but I think those two parties need to come to the table and have a discussion that we then need to look at and evaluate what the department heads say and what the committee says, and make sure we're not rushing this decision. And there's no hurry to get this done. We have a charter in place, which is not perfect, and whatever we do is not going to be perfect. But I don't want to put stuff in place that's going to be significantly negative to department heads and departments in general, that will make them not want to be here, participate, and potentially not serve their town as they have done for generations. I mean for decades. And secondly, I also want to look at the local option tax as a lovely idea, but I want to reach out to people like David Briggs and the independent businesses that will impact. It doesn't seem like 1% or 2% is huge, but it does make a significant, huge difference being a town on tax-free New Hampshire and with Amazon and the internet. So 1% doesn't seem like a lot to us as quote unquote residents or people here, but as a business owner, that's a significant cost that no one is reimbursing you for, and that we need to talk to them and reach out to them and see how they feel. I think we need to have the discussion, bring them to the table, and make sure that we understand their concerns before we make a decision just without including them.
Thank you, Dan. Lynn, I know you've been waiting quite a while.
I would love to know what the department heads had to say.
Sure.
We had heard directly from the town clerk, and answered her a couple times, but I have no idea what the other department heads said.
Good. And I think, Dan, to your concern, certainly we'll make sure we do our due diligence as we move forward. And if there are items we just think are sort of insurmountable or we need more info, that'll come into, play as well. So I think we'll have plenty of time to have those discussions and make sure we're all on the same page. I don't want to give the impression that we're going to rush it. We do have sort of deadlines we have to hit, but I think we can do it thoughtfully if we devote some time over the next few
So
meetings.
do you think that you will appoint a new commission,
I don't
or do you think you guys want to?
No,
I don't think.
no.
Okay.
Commission it to
I
death.
don't think that's something we would do. I mean, we've got it. We can amend it, and we can
Yeah.
move it forward. So I don't think we would need to take
The process as it is envisioned.
Okay, it's Lanny, then Kim, and then John.
Yeah, I just want to speak to the implementation of a local option tax.
That seems like the substantive debate we've
But
had.
we heard that, we heard the fact that, when we put in a rooms and meals tax, we heard the argument that businesses were going to suffer and businesses were going to complain about that. But we've had the local option tax for rooms and meals for a number of years now, and businesses are going strong in the town of Hartford. So I don't think it's an argument to say that a 1% sales tax, for the amount of money it will generate and help this town, will actually help the merchants because it will help our infrastructure. So,
thanks, Lanny. We will have discussions on substantive issues before us, including the local option tax. Kim, did you have a comment?
Just in terms of process, I don't know if we do want a subcommittee of the board or what, but when it comes time for us to actually wordsmith the language, I don't think it's a strength of ours. And I would like us to consider, maybe offline, like what is the best way to sort of workshop the language of the charter, even if it's setting parameters like, okay, every board member, you arrive at the meeting with your suggested edits or whatever that process is, but I'd like it to not be ambiguous because that has been a downfall.
There's only two issues that are contentious, though.
Pardon me?
There's only two issues that are the contentious issues.
I don't know. I mean, I think some of the clerks' comments were related to different things within the charter, were related to petitions and all kinds of things. It's
But
not,
I understand for changes. What I'm saying is for additions, though. If we were just to leave the charter as it is and add, the only two things that would be
this could be your suggestion, and I'm inclined to agree with that, but I still think that we need to basically workshop what it is that we are going to provide public hearings for, and we meet all the requirements for public notice, and then to have on the ballot if we are going to succeed in that. And I mean, if it's not considered a conflict of interest, I'd be happy to do some outreach to the business community, although I only really have, maybe that we could ask the chamber if they might want to do a
suggest the
survey
Chamber of Commerce should
for,
be doing this.
you know, anyway, and then Rocket has his hand up again when you're ready.
Okay, Rocket.
I just thought Dan made a bunch of great points and I wanted to support that.
Thanks, Rocket. So I think what we have to do is look back kind of from election day, right? And figure out all the timelines that we have to hit, you know, and we'll have to work, you know, devote a little bit of time for the next couple meetings to look at the charter language, you know. I mean, you know, if it's mainly just to clean up, we're probably good on some of it. We'll take into account the comments that were brought to us by the clerk. I think we'll decide what is, you know, going to be voted on separately, because as Lanny's mentioned, there are a couple items that are probably controversial. And let's just try and, you know, just move it forward to keep hitting the next sort of milestone so we can get this done. Kim?
Do you think, is it reasonable for us to request that the town manager just do a simple outreach to department heads to say, if you have any comments you'd like to make regarding the charter revisions? And again, I just sent the most recent version. And then would it also be reasonable to ask the town manager to reach out to the Chamber of Commerce to see if they'd be willing to put together a little brief survey to see how?
I think it would be reasonable. And I know that with the department heads, we have had our sort of interim folks running the town manager's office. Like, I think they did reach out. Yeah. So, you know,
so maybe
but just
are
ask them
other
again and see if there's anything
and that,
comes up.
you know, I think it is, I do think it would be important to clarify, and maybe we could discuss the language at some point, but I think it's important to clarify that that local option retail tax does apply to online purchases as well. So it's not like it's a competition with online. It basically is increasing the revenue to the town from online purchases, which is extremely valuable.
It also excludes food and clothing, things like that.
Yeah, things that are not already taxed at 6% are still not taxed.
Yeah,
it's only things that are currently taxed at the 6% Vermont sales
We
tax.
just cannot reiterate enough how important it is. For
And there's information on that in the email I forwarded to you on the capital planning forum that I attended to.
All right. We've been at this about almost 2 hours, so let's take a little break.
My only question was going to be timing.
Mr. Chair, may I quickly just say that?
Yeah, just hold on. Our town manager was about to make a comment, and then
My only question is, therefore, you'd like this to appear on the select board agenda for November 14th? Or do you want to start crowding into the budget sessions, which are in the off weeks?
let's hold off on crowding into the budget session.
Very
So let's see how far we can get on the 14th, which should give all of us time to review the language.
Yeah.
We can figure out who we want to come in. Well, probably Lynn or FX on some of that, and see what comments we get back from town staff.
Okay.
You know, it may be that it's, you know, it's pretty easy to come to a consensus on what language satisfies everybody, and then we can just, you know, we can take the next step. So FX, if you want to just a parting comment.
Just very quickly, just very quickly. You know, as long as we get the language that we want, that we think we want to present on the ballot done before Christmas, then we can have the first public hearing at Info Night. And then that will give you an opportunity to make any changes before finalizing the warrant at the end of January. And then the next public hearing would be at on town meeting day, and then there would be the vote, and you would be able to check off all those boxes. So basically, you've got 6 weeks to get this done.
Thanks, FX. All right, I think we should take a break and then come back. We've been at it for a while here, so maybe we'll come back just a little bit before 8 o'clock, 5 or 10. All right, we're on break. At least 10 minutes. It's always looking.
So
Rocket?
See? I believe so.
Okay. All right, well, we are back from our break. Our next item is the budget overview. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, once again. I'll just kind of skim through the memo you've received and have a few points of emphasis as I finish that out, okay? As you know, department heads crafted their annual budgets this month. Beginning in the middle of October, each of them met with the finance director and me to present their draft budgets for fiscal and Bugby Center also provided their budget requests. Once these were all inputted into MuniSmart, I did a review of them and made some relatively few recommended changes and narrative discussions. It is, after all, just my first few weeks here. So we had good discussions with the department heads. I really appreciate the very valuable contribution made by the finance director, Gail. She not only wore the acting manager hat, but of course knows where all the financial bodies are buried, so to speak, and she's a great resource there. Social service appropriation requests are due November 15th and are voted on at town meeting day, and requested amounts cannot be changed by the select board. Hartford historically supports these requests, so when we have received them, we have plugged them into the budget, not as a final commitment, but to give you a better idea of what the budget would look like if and when we get those requests. As we meet and discuss the department heads' budgets with the select board, staff of course will input confirmed changes into the select board column. We will of course also reserve discussion of big funding priorities for somewhat later in the session, so you have a better idea of what the annual operating budget proposals are and sort of the wish list that goes beyond that for bigger, newer programs and or hires. But we have a budget presentation schedule which has been laid out for you. The only change is that Parks and Rec will present on November 7th, while police and dispatch have agreed to take their spot later on the 14th. Everything else remains as indicated there.
Can I ask a question about that
yes.
specifically?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to wait till, I can wait till you're done?
Either.
Just because I noticed the schedule. I mean, we are supposed to have our questions in for the November 7th meeting by Thursday. And so I've spent, as I.
Oh, I didn't know there was an opportunity for board questions before the
Yeah,
presentations.
so this was a previous schedule that Gail had
Okay,
prepared for
okay.
us, which, so it's fine, except for I spent a lot of time working on the police and fire
Okay.
dispatch budgets.
Yep.
And so now I feel like I will rush to, I guess my question would be, could we have an extension on when we get our questions to you? Like, could we get questions to you by Monday for Parks and Rec? Or,
I'd have no objection to
I
it.
mean, it doesn't even necessarily mean, I mean,
There was simply
Yeah,
a
that kind of
conflict for
put-
the police department that night, that's all.
okay, I think it's reasonable and proactive for, the finance director had said, like, you know, rather than us just presenting questions to the department heads at the presentation
Okay.
meeting, if we give them
Good,
to them
okay.
in advance, it just gives them time to consider.
Yes, yes.
And so as long as that deadline could be a little flexible, then I'd appreciate that, because
What is it, this Thursday?
so for November 2nd, which is this Thursday, we were supposed to originally have questions prepared for police, fire, and dispatch.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I haven't even looked at Parks and Rec yet.
Okay. I mean, there's no objection, Don.
That would be
Wait.
great. Thank you.
But this is our schedule for.
That's
Right,
the
but
revised
it's
schedule, yes.
The original one had fire, police, and dispatch on November 7th.
Right,
So now it's Parks and Rec and fire.
that's fine. Yeah,
Totally fine, as long as I don't have to have all my questions in by Thursday.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Very good.
Okay.
Department heads have reviewed and considered the select board guidance document in terms of your priorities for the budget process. And they've been asked to really take it to heart as to what your goals are, whether it's taking care of what we have, the town's infrastructure, our equipment, our buildings, and our people. In addition, many of the maintenance and upgrades to town-owned buildings and vehicles also fit in with the needs to address municipal emissions as part of the climate action plan. It bears noting, of course, that several department heads, including myself, are new to the process, so we're doing our best, and that's again where Gail has come in to be so indispensably helpful through this process. In terms of the recent impact of events, the new department heads and recently renewed union contracts should afford the town greater stability going forward and predictability as well. We've generally recovered in the region from COVID and supply chain related shortages, but the notable exceptions are vehicles and ammunition. Nevertheless, we've seen increase in healthcare coverage and petroleum products. Healthcare has gone up 14% over the last year, although MVP still remains the best value in terms of providers for groups of our size. Dental coverage is expected to go up 4%. We've met with our insurance broker and we're told that these are increases that they're seeing all across the board and in all industries. The town, as you know, has paid 85% of these costs, and that percentage will remain the same in the current draft budgets that you're seeing. As part of Vermont's as part of the board's guidance to both identify ways to be a competitive employer and retain employees, we have offered to both union employees and non-union employees a 4% wage increase, which is factored in to the budget to deal with the ongoing effects of some persistent, although lower, inflation. And of course, there are some budgets that include some funding for staff recognition and staff training. The assessor is currently predicting a very slight 0.5% increase in the grand list. Of course, the grand list will be finalized in the summer, and in July of 2024, you will be asked to set tax rates based on those final numbers from the budget and from the grand list, so that tax bills can be sent out thereafter. A couple of words about enterprise funds. The town maintains several enterprise funds. Both water and sewer funds are always budgeted to achieve balance, while at the same time we have an ongoing problem with the landfill/transfer station that has been operating in the red and continues to do so in the current budget proposal from DPW. There is a study that's underway, and we expect to have that within the next week or two, I'm told. Yes, and of course, as to the enterprise funds, the DPW will have the opportunity to adjust figures and adjust rates later in this fiscal year. So that's some latitude that exists for DPW. Of course, we have a local option tax. The question is whether to expand it for sales of other items beyond meals, rooms, and alcohol. The typical amount realized currently from our lot is $300,000, although we always try to estimate on the more conservative side of that. That, of course, will remain to be seen in terms of their charter revision and whether the voters will support an expansion of the local option tax. In the past, the town has funded allocations to cemeteries from lot. However, I gather from the body language of the select board at a recent meeting, I gather that maybe there's no longer an appetite to use the local option tax.
Not for libraries.
For the libraries, yes, that's what I meant, I'm sorry. Yeah. Finally, I am informed by Gail that the town has really not had an effective capital improvement plan for several years. The result is that capital needs sometimes have been addressed within annual operating budgets. Ideally, any purchase or investment with a useful life greater than 5 years should be purchased or paid from capital or reserve accounts dedicated for that purpose. Each department's annual budget should contain sufficient funds to make disciplined transfers into those funds. to preclude the need for borrowing or rating other accounts. So I'm hopeful that Gail and I can work to kind of reestablish the CIP for Hartford so we can get on a system of more routine, regular investments in things that we know we'll be needing in the future. It's something definitely to shoot for. And I want you all to know, of course, that when we get toward the end of the process, and if you're looking through the cushions on the sofa for ways to find money to offset otherwise larger tax increases, there are several pots of money available. And of course, Gail and I will make you aware of what those balances are in terms of ARPA, the local options tax, existing reserves, and other possibilities. I did want to say that there's a couple of cautionary notes that Gail and I have been discussing on ways to make this sometimes difficult process more orderly and maybe more rational in terms of the final product. And those are two. Her emphasis is that, and I agree with her, of course, is that it would be helpful for the board members to hear all budget presentations from all department heads before reaching conclusions about making adjustments to the proposed budgets. That's just so that if you're dazzled by a department head on week one, you haven't added money to their budget to such that the presenter at the end of the line suffers, or contrarily, the same thing. The other is an aversion to the process of live edits through Munismart of changes on this day and that day and the other day. The way she presents it is that, and I use the analogy, measure twice, cut once. Let's all try to reach a consensus as to what adjustments you'd like to make toward the end of the process. Then we can play with any sort of scenario you like about adjusting this budget or that budget or using this reserve or that reserve to achieve a final product as to what the tax rates and tax impacts might be. She just felt that if we tried to do that throughout the process, it can get messy and cause unneeded delays and lack of focus on the process. So with that said, I just want to encourage each of you to listen carefully to the department heads, raise any and all questions you wish to take. Good notes, of course, would be handy so that if you have strong feelings about the recreation budget and you don't want to lose them when the time comes to make some adjustments toward the end of the process, you'll have them handy. So please keep track of your thoughts so they're fresh in your mind. Then toward the end of the process, it'll be time to raise each suggestion that any of you might have, and I'll be looking, and Gail will be looking for consensus or at least a majority in favor of any change to the proposed budget numbers. The town, as I say, has several pots of money, and we'll be looking for Gail's input at that point to find out where we might take steps to offset impact on taxpayers. So with that said, that's my overview.
Question, John, can you remind me again of when it is that we might have a better handle on the grand list?
Well, the grand list, as I understand the process, and this is the way it was in Pittsford, I'm sure it's the way in every town, the grand list doesn't get lodged by the assessor's office until, I believe, June of any given year. Then that's a figure that can be used with other figures like your proposed budgets to arrive at a tax rate, which then gets plugged into everybody's tax bills, which then go out to everybody. So those numbers are finalized, I believe, in June. It could be maybe as early as May, depending on how fast they are on this. And then it allows us to compute tax rates.
So do you know what our current grand list is?
I don't know that number handy right now off the top of my head, but I know that they're projecting an increase of 0.5%.
Okay, that is a number worth holding on to, though, because that does affect the tax rate.
So. Of course, yes. And that's whatever we decide in terms of these budgets, that'll be the first part of that conversation on tax bills. The next conversation would take place in June when you have to implement that by setting tax rates.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
I Yep, I have a couple of general questions or requests. One is, I had asked John if we could
Yes.
have a formatted, and maybe nobody else wants this, but I would like a formatted budget book that has the actual of 2022 as column 1. That's what we did last year. We went like, I don't find it useful to know what was approved for 2023 as much as I would find the actual for 2022. Is anyone else?
I asked her if it was possible to even add a column, and she says at that point, it becomes microscopic.
Yeah,
You
and
don't want
honestly,
that.
even like the font last year was like, if the budget book could be formatted just as it was last year,
Mhm.
that would be ideal.
Mhm.
I mean, that would be my preference, and if not every board member wants it, I'll live without it, because I just keep 2 books, but if there is consensus, then let's put that request forward.
I'm gonna be honest and say that I haven't had a chance to look this over that much yet.
Sure.
Okay, we just got them.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think Kim and I will both agree on is that having especially salaries columns broken down, breakout. We always had a breakout in the past of salaries for like town manager salary and administrative assistant salary and HR director salary. And at one point it was thought to throw it all together. And I can't speak for Kim, but I believe that she would agree with me that we need to separate those so we can see those numbers and we can also have the transparency to the voters.
I hear what you're saying. I do know that for many employees, they are shared by multiple different departments. Like, for example, my salary is broken into 2 or 3 different places.
Understandable.
And I imagine that there could be a way for Gail to run a report that would have every employee's salary, maybe as an addition to what you've got. Would that be helpful?
Well, I really like to see it in the budget because it affects the budget.
I don't know how she can accomplish.
Not every single employee.
Reformatting that. Or do you have
Not
certain
every
employees?
employees, but like when it comes to department level employees, department hierarchy level employees.
Department heads and subheads, maybe?
Yes. Subs and heads, subheads.
Well, perhaps a way to do that, and I know Gail is a genius, so she might have better ideas than me, but because sometimes there's the narratives. So if there's multiple salaries or parts of salaries, even in the same GL code, even if that could be broken out, if that's not too much trouble to be broken out in the narrative
That
for
would be
particular
acceptable.
columns, then we'd be able to
That would be
maybe
acceptable.
get at
Okay.
what Lanny's suggesting and
Yeah.
I didn't want to lose what you
That's
brought
okay,
up
I've still got more questions, but I'll wait.
Kim before, but if that's not too much work to reformat, I think the actuals are helpful for 2023 or 2022. Because I feel like we've come up against this before where we end up having, maybe I wouldn't call it a surplus, but we definitely have some left over from the year in terms of what's not actually used. And so I think it is helpful just to see as we're continuing to hone and get more specific and hopefully be as, aligned as possible.
And just to be
actuals
clear
are.
about this, I had no objection to Kim's request. It was just my view that I had raised this with Gail, who said she had remembered last year that the board liked this particular format. But if it's not the case, we can print it in a different format.
What we ended up with was the preferred format. So same format as the final 24 budget is what I would like.
But instead of for example, if I'm looking at the current format, you'd like to have another actual here.
Yep, just this, so.
Yeah, for another year back.
Yeah, I like the approved for 24.
Yeah.
Makes sense, but then.
Yeah.
Actual for the other.
I mean, the question I guess I would have too is that, and maybe it's not the time to ask the question, but I'm gonna do it anyways. The increase from the approved of select board salaries of 38,250 to 53,325. How did that?
Well, right, so.
That's
This is specific.
but
I have been asked
that's
that
a 23
question.
budget,
I have been
so.
asked that question and I'm looking into it
Okay.
because I know Kim wanted some
Yeah.
further detail about
Yeah,
it.
that's the 23 budget. We're not talking about 24, 25 yet. So
I have a question. This may be just too unwieldy, but I keep remembering Gail saying, remember, there are some numbers that you have no control over, which are obviously the benefits and everything.
Mhm.
Is there a way without people freaking out of finding out when we start this process, whether it's I don't know, percentage or a total or each section, the ones that we can't touch?
Right.
What is the amount that we can't touch? That's part of, the union negotiations, the benefits that people have. I don't want there to be anybody in the public that's upset about that. But at the same
Right.
time, we need to know.
You need to explain why it's not a blank check, that
Right.
you're committed to a lot of this spending
Right.
already. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I will look into that.
Yes, so the other two things. One is if there's a way, like when an item is moved from one GL to another, if the new GL could be indicated, it would be helpful. For example, the mechanic in the police department was moved to cruiser repairs or something like that, but then I have to go and search for, so if it's moved from one GL code to another, if we could know what the other GL code is, that would be great. That's
Okay.
kind of a minor one, I
Sure.
noticed, but if we're doing new books anyway. And then if we could get a general update on what the current balance in the unassigned fund is.
Yes. In fact, I know that number.
Oh.
It's 3.21 million or something along those lines. I didn't want to bring it tonight because I was afraid I might use it and we might focus on it when we're just having an overview
Yep.
discussion.
That's great.
Yep.
And then finally, for super general overview is if there is any summary that.
By the way, none of that is even confirmed until you hear from the auditor at the end of
Yeah, right.
November.
Which we're probably gonna get, will we get, what quarter are we in we'll get a finance update.
That's what I was just gonna ask, is when do we
Quarterly
get that?
update pretty soon.
When do we get that finance update for
Where
the
are we
quarter?
now? So September, July, August, September, yeah, so
Yeah.
first quarter.
Yeah.
And then if there's any way possible to get, and if this is too much to ask, then that's fine, but I really would be helpful for where there were salary savings in the fiscal 23 budget. I would love to know what they were allocated for.
From the lack of a town manager or some
For all,
other,
and
lots of
police
people
and-
not being
yeah,
there.
and
I think
basically,
town manager funds were used, but.
Yeah, okay.
a lot of, there's, because obviously we're comparing, we're looking at certain departments and some of the salary amounts are way up, but I know that some were just not used because we weren't fully staffed.
Our police department is. a
In
good
which
example.
case overtime might be oversubscribed,
Exactly.
but the regular salaries are
And it-
undersubscribed.
Yeah, that's
Our
the case.
police department is a perfect example
Yeah.
for that.
Right,
We were
so
understaffed.
anyway, if there's any way to get just a general summary of what the salary savings were for fiscal 23 and a general idea of what those were used for, I would find that to be extremely useful.
Okay.
And that's the question for the moment.
Okay.
Any other overview questions or anything you want us to take away, John?
No question from you for follow-up for you, Kim. When you say what were those funds used for? Do you suspect that salary was used for other purposes?
Mhm.
Okay.
And
But no, I don't have any, Mr. Chairman, and I think I'll look forward to learning about how you develop your budgets here.
is this something we're adding on for tonight?
No, that's just something that when the town manager budget is presented, I think we've added the select board that night. So we're just hoping that you will give some thought as to whether you think you want to give yourselves a raise. That's really what I'm prompting you to think about,
Well, it's not us to give us a raise, it's the townspeople to give us a raise.
to propose a raise. There you go.
We still want to.
Yeah, and
Remember, we have a boss.
No, I hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
right, but one of my main objections when it came up at town meeting was that I wasn't opposed to increasing the amount paid, but that I felt like it should be discussed during the budget process.
Right.
So,
Right.
Very good.
All right, so the community safety assessment proposal, we're doing that in executive session, so let's skip that and go to the joint welcoming community, or wait, application to join welcoming community cohort. Kim, I think you provided an agenda memo.
So let me see if they're right. I wasn't looking at Zoom. Okay. Yes. So basically, board members recall that I participated in VLCT's welcoming and engaging cohort last year. They are offering it again, and they would very much welcome Hartford to participate again. And ideally, if our town manager is interested in participating, they welcome them. And then this year, they're also expanding it to if there is a department head that is interested in participating, they would welcome that as well. And John said that he would be willing to bring that up at the stand-up meeting on Monday to see if there's any department heads that would like to participate. And the application deadline is November 9th, so that would give us time to submit the application. I would be available and interested in participating again, but if there is another board member who is not up for re-election in March that wants to participate, I would absolutely defer and welcome one to do that instead.
You're up for election in March?
No,
You're not in March?
no, 25.
Who's up in March?
I'm up in March.
Rocket.
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 and-
I am.
Okay.
So it sounds like we still need to know whether a department head would be interested before we move this, right?
True, but the deadline for the application, so I think maybe if the board is willing to just approve 3 participants from Hartford or something of that nature, basically I just wanted to see if the board supports the application process.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
I'm
gonna
not
ask
against it.
can I have some follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ellie.
Yeah, I would be supportive of it, and I would be supportive personally of you, Kim, continuing. Just, I think it is helpful to have that continuity. And what else did I want to ask? So I noticed, I was looking at the application, and there needs to be a letter of support. So I did want to, if we want to move forward with participating, we would need to get a letter of support that's signed by the majority of the select board. And that would need to happen, that would need to be at our next available meeting opportunity to do that, to get it in by the
We are
9th.
meeting on the 7th.
Yeah, we could do
We
this
could do it on the
7th.
7th. I know it's a budget meeting, but
But first thing, it's not, I don't expect it to be time consuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do that and wait for like the people who want to do it until we have the names?
Is that okay?
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
All right, and then I'll draft the letter, which I'll just use last year's. Thank you for.
Sorry, were you done?
I did have a couple more.
Oh, yeah,
So,
sorry.
And then my other question was, who would actually fill out the application? I'd be happy to be supportive of that if that's helpful. It's not a very long application, but I just wanted to make sure we knew who would do that.
I'm happy to, unless the town manager wants to.
I'm happy to have you do it, Kelly.
And I'm happy to help if the board is okay with that. And then the last question I had was, is it something where in order to apply to participate, 3 representatives from the town need to be identified, or it could be up to 3? So like, for instance, if a department had said, I know last year there was interest, but there was concern about capacity. So if that were an issue again, would it be okay to still apply with 2 people? Or does
Oh,
it
I
need
think
to
so,
be?
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. In
Just curious.
fact, the Jude got back to me today, delighted to have Hartford join the next cohort. Pleased to apply, send 3 people through. It can be any combination of roles. Would be great if you join as peer supporter with others who are in cohort 1.0. So I think it's fairly flexible. And even last year, we started the participation with 2, but then ended up having to, we didn't have a town manager anymore, so it was just 1.
Yes.
So I think it's fairly flexible. And I think the final thing I would add is that, we participated in that survey at the end of the process, and I think there was great outcome. It'll be interesting to see if we're able to do it again with, like, I feel like the participation might be even more robust with the town manager sending out the invitation to staff and volunteers to participate. Like I think we got pretty good response last year, even though it was quite a transitional time. And it would be quite interesting to be able to look at the results of this last, 2022 versus 2023, or maybe it'll go into 24. Anyway, so that will be part of the whole process again.
Okay, so look for us to move this on the 7th.
Yep. Okay, so we can do some of these agenda sort of items here. The commission reports. Lanny, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Rocket, do you have any commission reports?
Yeah, just that town and school meeting committee is going to try to be included in the charter discussion. I forget, I don't know the exact details for it, but it's something about the charter being overly prescriptive about when the process has to happen. Besides that, nothing else.
Okay, thanks, Rocket. Allie, do you have anything?
I do. So Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion, the committee appointed a new chair, longtime committee member Pat Artilio. So want to thank Pat for stepping into that role. The select board received an email from Pat with H. Corey's suggested budget recommendations for this upcoming fiscal year budget process, including funding for policy management, public information officer, our annual Juneteenth celebration, training for select board and staff, community safety review, and further discussion on the possibility of increasing select board compensation. So wanted to flag that again as we head into budget process for consideration. And they've been in touch with, Lebanon has a diversity, equity, and inclusion commission, and Lebanon's group is interested in having joint quarterly meetings with H. Corey, as well as other equity related groups in the Upper Valley to have more collaboration. So they'll be pursuing that. Then there's one committee vacancy, Hartford Committee on Housing and Homelessness. We had an excellent visit from Corinne Jans, who's from the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Development, CVOEC, who offered an overview of a lot of resources that they have for to support municipal housing committees. There's different toolkits, workshops. They have a whole schedule and a calendar of different housing related workshops that they offer. So for free to folks, which is fantastic. There's going to be a community meeting on November 9th at 6:30 p.m. at the Bugby Senior Center. There's a presentation on the final draft of the town plan housing chapter. That's near finalization. And finally, the committee's helping consider possibilities for Planning and Development Director Lori Hirschfeld has come to the board to talk about a potential town housing development program to support missing middle housing and increasing ADUs. So the committee is working just to support thinking through what that proposal could look like for that pilot program. 2 committee vacancies, encourage folks to apply if you're interested. And finally, Resilient Hartford still has 1 committee vacancy. So please apply if you're interested.
Thanks, Allie. Mary?
Sure. Hartford Parks and Rec, they have 2 vacancies. Members of the Parks and Rec Department took their annual tour of the parks and explored with Director Scott Hostler the projects and hopes for improving the use for many parks the town of Hartford maintains. Lyman Park, Memorial Park, Downtown Green Space and White River Junction, Kilowatt Parks, Watson Park, and Waba Arena were major stops, with discussions centering around invasive plant control, disability accessible play spaces and walkways, the monument to the military veterans from World War I and World War II, accessible boating and kayak docks, the river flow and bank degradation at Watson, and a visit to the Zamboni at Waba. I love that word, Zamboni. And the Eagle Scout project that encloses our porta potties at Kilowatt. This was a great opportunity to see where we are at the moment and hope to be in the future.
Thanks, Mary.
Yep.
Dan, do you have any commission reports?
Not really. I just want to piggyback on Allie and congratulate the new chair for the committee. And I also want to just, she indirectly said it, but didn't specifically. So I want to say thank you to Sarah Campbell for her chairing that committee for several years.
Thanks, Dan. Kim?
Design Review Committee met October 26th and approved a design review application from Northern Stage for 3 multi-unit dwellings on Gate Street in downtown White River Junction. They have presented a more elaborate proposal in 2022, and they've scaled it back a little bit. And the committee approved the project unanimously and recommended that it move forward to the planning commission for consideration.
Thank you, Kim. I don't have anything, so we'll do the consent agenda. Anyone wants to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve payroll ending October 28, 2023, AP manifests of 10/27/2023 and 9/2/2023, and amended minutes of October 17, 2023.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now we'll go into executive session. We need two motions to do that, so take a motion. Anyone wants to make the first one? Ally?
Mr. Chair, I move to find that premature general public knowledge of select board deliberations over competing safety review consultants will clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Go ahead, second.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Mary. Any discussion?
Yes.
Lynn?
Explain to me why this is gonna bring the town to a disadvantage. It would bring a disadvantage to firms, but I don't understand why it's gonna bring the town to a disadvantage.
We did ask specifically of VLCT whether it would be appropriate when a board is reviewing proposals from consultants to deliberate in executive session. And their response was that, yes, that could be done. And one of the arguments, of course, is that good, candid discussion and apples to orange comparisons might need to be done. And if the board is mindful of not wishing to alienate consultants that might in the future want to bid or do business with the town, that's a perfectly legitimate reason to spare people bad feelings from a process that would take place in executive session.
Okay, I always like to err on the side of transparency, so I need to understand why it is that we need to go into executive session to discuss this.
Do you feel satisfied with that answer?
I personally think it's something we could discuss in open session, but I'll go with the majority of the board.
So we've got a motion and a second. Okay, I'll call the roll. Lanny?
Aye.
Rocket?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
And I will vote aye.
There's no reason to call a roll when it's unanimous.
Well, I know, I didn't know if it was gonna be unanimous based on the comments, Lanny, so I just wanted to make sure we were by the book. Second motion, I will take a motion.
I move that we enter executive session to discuss competing safety review consultant proposals under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
I'll second.
We have a second from Ally. Any discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we are going into executive session.
Dan and Rocket, would you rather phone call or send you a Zoom link?
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
What's
Phone
that?
call is easy. Zoom link is easy. Either one.
Okay, I'll send a link. We'll try that.
So we have Dan and Rocket on.
I'm here.
Take a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
23 second.
Carrie's motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Luce, do we not have the end?
Well, we have to do it, because if he's not there, it's not unanimous, right?
No,
So what would we call it that rule?
okay,
Okay,
To come out of executive session.
yeah, so we have a motion to come out of executive session, made by Ally, seconded by Mary. Lanny,
Yes.
Rocket.
Yeah, be a fool not to.
Don't look so crazy, we have to do it by roll.
We don't have to do it by
Dan
roll.
didn't vote.
Oh, he didn't do it?
He's not
Yeah.
Oh,
Rocket.
Aye.
he's not here. Huh?
Ally,
Aye.
Mary,
aye.
Dan,
Absent.
absent, Kim,
Aye.
I will vote aye. Okay, I'll take another motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the town of Hartford hire the firm of Strategy Matters to conduct a community safety review study at the quoted cost of $30,000 in accordance with the RFP process, and that we authorize the town manager to enter into the contract and notify all consultants of the decision.
I will second that.
You have a second, any discussion on this one? Just to explain, we, in executive session, we've reviewed the community safety RFPs that we had received. And now we just selected one with that vote, Strategy Matters. So there we go. Kim?
And I would like to thank Lanny Collins for preparing a matrix for use in the scoring process.
Great. Is Dan back on Zoom?
It's not.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
I'd like to echo, are we in discussion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'd like to just echo Kim's comments. Lanny, I know you put a lot of work into that process. I also do want to say there were a lot of good candidates out there, and so I do want to just acknowledge that we thought there were some really great proposals, and looking forward to the hard work and excellent product delivery by Strategy Matters.
Thank you, Rocket. Yeah, there were a lot of great proposals, so it wasn't an easy decision. All right, so we will call the vote by roll because Dan is not here. Lanny?
Aye.
Rocket?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Dan? Here. Kim?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. All right, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a second.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll. Lanny?
Aye.
Rocket?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Dan's not here. Kim?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. Thank you very much.
Did everybody sign? Oh, we did that.
Thanks and good night, everyone.
Feel better.
Yeah, Lana won't let us out of here.